Good evening, Mr. Davies.
Good evening, David. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing okay.
I got an email from Vita earlier today. Said she's a little under the weather, so she would like me to run the meeting.
Okay. Sounds
So
good.
I don't think she will be joining, but
Well, I'm happy to follow up with Vita. I always have time for Vita.
yeah, we all should.
Yeah.
Looks like we have a couple of other folks on here.
Hey, it's Vicky. I'm signing in, but I got the dog, so I'm going to be on mute.
Sounds good. Thanks, Vicky. Hello, Sergio.
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm actually driving to Michigan, so I'm probably going to stay off video and just listen tonight.
I'd like you to turn it around so I can see how fast you're driving. Oh, you're driving in left lane? Passing a semi?
Left lane, 75 miles an hour. It's not that dangerous.
No, it's not.
We're on cruise control, David.
You're doing fine.
My wife is sitting right next to me. She wouldn't let me do anything dangerous.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for buzzing in.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to go.
Sounds good. See, Mackenzie is on. There's an iPhone that I don't know who that is. And then we have Fred Olson and Nick Dial all joined. Nobody wants to turn their cameras on. There's Mr. Dial.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I am the iPad.
You're the iPad.
Yeah.
Who's the iPhone? Mysterious. I like that. That's good. Just a lurker. There's Mr. Vol. Hello, Jim.
Hello. Sorry, I'm late.
Okay, you actually might be early.
Okay.
Still kind of assembling here. Steve Faber. Cole Bueller. Hello, hello. Hello, Steve.
Hey, David, if that was David.
Yep. And I think we've got Nicole on. Hi, Nicole.
David Wellington, this is Laura Dickinson. I'm on the iPhone, I
Oh,
think.
great. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
I'm going to go off my video. It just might make it easier for everybody to join in.
Sounds good. Thanks, Steve. So maybe we'll give folks a couple more minutes to come in here. Vita emailed me earlier and said she's under the weather, so she'd like me to run the agenda, which I'm woefully underqualified for, but I'm going to do my best. What I have been able to follow with regard to email is it seems like we've got kind of two primary agenda points. The first being a presentation from Met Council on the light rail construction project, and we have an update on that. And then the second bullet point being predominantly a discussion and communication from city staff about the encampment at Second and Van White, or one block immediately west of that. Does anybody have anything else that they thought should be on the agenda that I'm missing?
Hey, Jerry Kraus. This is Steve Faber. You look as good as you did the last time I saw you.
Hey, you're kind of blank. You kind of blank expression on your face there.
It's been a while. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's good to be heard.
All right.
I think we got Naomi logging on. Hi, Naomi.
Hello.
We're going to go one more minute and then we're going to launch into our vaunted agenda here. Okay, 6:05. So just to reiterate, Vita emailed me earlier today. She's a little under the weather. She asked me to run the agenda. I have just two agenda points. Briefly, a presentation from Met Council on the Southwest LRT expansion, Green Line extension line, an update on their progress and kind of what's to come. And then the second bullet point is a discussion about the encampment at Second and Van White, or one block west of that. And I believe we received a statement from city staff with regard to their engagement on that encampment more recently. So those are the two agenda items I have on the list. If anybody has anything else to add to that, I'm more than happy to add things to the agenda. I'm not an experienced meeting person, so if I'm doing it wrong, I apologize. It's not at all purposeful. Please jump in and let me know that where I'm erring. My count has that we do not have a quorum of 8 certified card carrying ROC members. So I don't believe that any action that could be taken this evening could be codified as a formal ROC action. If I'm mistaken in that, please let me know. But we may gain further attendance as we go deeper into this evening, and that may shift. My understanding is quorum is 8. So does anybody have any other business or things to add to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to turn it over to the folks from Met Council, Metro Transit.
Thanks, David. Folks, my name is David Davies. I've been at this meeting, I think, at least once before. Thank you so much for having us tonight. And with me is our Director of Construction for the Green Line Extension Light Rail Project, Nick Dial. We are going to be giving a presentation that's similar to the round of public meetings that we had in the past month. Got a bit of a project update and then some information about kind of the Bassett Creek Valley area. I'm going to share my screen here, and then we can get rolling. Everybody can see that, okay?
Yes.
All right. So, and Nick's going to handle some of the kind of the overarching project update, and I'll handle the construction activities. But just to give you a taste of what we're doing tonight, we are not going to talk about systems. That was my bad. But we'll run through this pretty quickly and afford some time for Q&A. Let's see here. Everybody, I think, on this meeting is pretty familiar with the Green Line extension at this point, but we always like to make sure people are aware of the scope of the project, especially as the meeting's recorded. We like making sure that people who are new to the area, who might stumble upon this, understand what the project is about. It's 14.5 miles with 16 new stations, and it's a 1-seat ride from Eden Prairie to downtown St. Paul, using both the new extension and then connecting into the existing Green Lane that operates between Minneapolis and St. Paul. Of course, there are myriad connections to rail and bus routes. And right now we project that, that it's about a 35-minute trip from Minneapolis down to Eden Prairie. In terms of our scope, as I said, we have 16 new stations. We have a whole lot of structures on this project, 29 new bridges, and then an additional 7 existing bridges with modifications. We have a half dozen tunnels and 2 cut and cover tunnels, including the Kenilworth Tunnel to the south of the Bryn Mawr and Bassett Creek Valley area, which certainly is well known to the community. I'm going to turn it over to Nick. He'll provide just a little bit of background of what we've shared with the public recently in terms of our project update. And Nick, I can just click through as you tell me to.
Thanks, David. So we've kind of identified some, these 5 overarching activities that we have on the project as we're moving through construction. We had utilities and site prep. And where we're at currently is, constructing these structures, tracks, and stations with our civil contractor. And once that contract is nearing completion, we'll be engaging our systems contractor to come through and begin setting traction power substations and the overhead catenary work and getting the system electrified and ready for testing. And those are essentially the 5 major components for constructing the light rail. And we're at about 60% complete with our civil construction, which is the structures, track, and stations that are currently ongoing. So that's the current status. As we were working through construction, we added 3 major change orders to the project. These are our key issues. We added a corridor protection barrier wall when we're going through negotiations with our Burlington Northern Santa Fe partners. We added a C-camp pile retaining wall as part of the Kenilworth Tunnel due to some unforeseen soil conditions that we encountered when we were doing our silent piler operation. And then we also added the Eden Prairie Town Center Station down in Eden Prairie in between the Golden Triangle stations and Southwest Station. This next slide is to cover kind of what we're incurring currently, which is our civil construction schedule and cost. So we had our original civil construction schedule, and then we added with those change orders impacted that construction plan, and to the tune of about 34 months for our schedule impacts due to those change orders. And then that then in turn equals our revised civil construction schedule and costs. And so we're still negotiating what those costs look like, but we've got a rebaseline schedule developed with our contractor, and we're currently working to that plan, which takes us out into this projected 2027 revenue service date. So how do we develop this projection for 2027? This is it's just to talk about, we take these issues together, which is the Green Line extension contracts. And so we have multiple contracts. We have the civil contract, which you guys can see out in the neighborhood currently ongoing. And we've worked through that revised civil construction schedule and currently are negotiating the cost impacts for those. And then after that, and currently in development is our revised system schedule and costs. And then we will be tacking on to the end of that will be our revised testing schedule and that cost associated with that. And that would be for our overall development of our revenue service date. So currently we feel comfortable projecting out to 2027 as the year, but as we get these schedules negotiated, we're hoping to see some improvement on that. Let's see. What was that last slide?
Oh,
David?
sorry.
It's okay. Currently, yeah, we're looking at 34 months with our civil project. We've got, we're negotiating with systems and SCADA and discussing how we're going to be revising our testing plan to meet that opening day. And our estimated project cost now is ranging from 2.65 to 2.75 billion. With revised costs to be known when all agreements are finalized, and we're projecting that opening day in 2027. The project budget is we've previously completed cost-cutting measures when we were releasing the civil contract out for bid for both civil and systems contract, those being the two major contracts, and with us at currently 60% with the civil contract, and the systems contract being completely dependent on what is constructed by the civil. There's not really any capacity to do any funding adjustments or cost-cutting measures at this time. And then, so this slide is to talk about, so we looked around the country to see how our costs are comparing to other projects around the country. And so you can see that our previous Green Line extension budget was about 152 million per mile. And the revised extension now will be 180 to 190 million per mile. Peer projects around the country are between 200 and 500 million per mile, dependent on what kind of site constraints that they have. Here's just a layout of what that looks like. It's got us at the top with the Green Line extension, 14.5 miles with 16 stations, and we're 180 to 190. We've got Pittsburgh in there. These are some of these are just short track extensions, but adding 3 stations, and that's at 560 million per mile. And then the Seattle U-Links also at 511 per mile, and then the East Link, which is more applicable to this size, which is a 13.9 mile extension for their line, and that's about 259 million per mile. So these are just some of our sister projects around the country that and what they look like, and so not to say that we're getting a bargain, but it is a lesser cost around the country than we're seeing. And the $2+ billion in permitted planning, community and development. So that's just this slide just to demonstrate, as if you build it, they will come, is one of those things that you hear about in the movies. But we're seeing people building out developments even prior to LRT being in, just knowing what the alignment is. And that's just things that are currently under development or projected to be under the development as LRT nears its completion.
Thanks, Nick. And I think if it's possible, David, we'll just run through the rest, and I think we can get through it and then take some questions. I'm sure we'll have some. So just a few more slides here. So in terms of construction highlights, this is for the overall project. Nick mentioned we're 60% complete with civil construction. We have the whole corridor is active. As folks see when they are interacting with the corridor in one form or another, you're either driving across a road, on a road that crosses the corridor, or walking on a trail maybe that abuts the corridor. You're seeing work everywhere. Certainly there are varying degrees of work. Some places look hopping every day, and then some places are, say like, Bryn Mawr is active, or West 21st Street down a little bit south, like has a lot of work that has been going on, maybe not so active right at this moment, but you're definitely seeing the entire corridor buzzing with activity from Eden Prairie into Minneapolis. Just a quick snapshot here that we've got the vast majority of private utilities completed, as well as a majority of public utilities completed. Just noting that number, that was a really heavy lift to start construction, getting those utilities either relocated temporarily or permanently, or coordinated with those owners or users. That was no small feat. And then, of course, we've got, when it comes to the systems contract and the LRV contract, the light rail vehicle contract, the Franklin operations and maintenance facility contracts, you've got work continuing or really making great progress in those areas as well. Kind of mentioned West 21st Street, and you can kind of see the progression of if you're in the area and you're able to walk down the trail, seeing kind of you squint and kind of can see the finished product there at West 21st Street, and then you bump up to Bryn Mawr and you're seeing something really still in its infancy, but making good progress with the pedestrian bridge. And then we're just starting the station work and foundation in that area. But you see that progression. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about Bassett Creek Valley too, of like where that, that we expect to see that same level of activity approaching Bassett Creek Valley as well. But a lot of the LRT stations are underway, and you're going to see the majority of them that haven't really been start to get focused on in the coming season or two. Even though it's not in the kind of like ROC's purview, we always like to just show that, we are making progress with the Kenilworth Tunnel. Right now, for instance, even though we certainly have seen some complications near the Cedar Isles condos, we're currently excavating to the north near Cedar Lake Parkway. You'll start to see some additional work there, some concrete work, followed by the closure of Cedar Lake Parkway for about 10 months. Yet this late spring, early summer. So making progress on the tunnel as well. Moving up the corridor closer to Bassett Creek Valley, certainly you're seeing progress on the corridor protection barrier. You kind of drive over or walk along the trail, and it's it's there's a lot of wall there that's been built. So which is really encouraging. Nick mentioned that this was one of the changes in scope. So it is encouraging to see the progress made on this specific element. Also no small feat in moving this process forward. Specifically to the Bassett Creek Valley area, we know that the trails are very valuable to folks. So I hear about them probably on a near daily, definitely weekly basis of inquiring minds about how they can get some of these trail facilities back. We'll talk about that a little bit here. But knowing that the loose line trail bridge specifically is certainly making some progress. It doesn't look much right there, but you kind of take the whole area and you start to see some real progress being made on the pedestrian bridge, the trail bridge. It's going to connect from the Bryn Mawr Meadows area, and remember that it's in a slightly different alignment than it used to be. It'll connect into basically directly into the Bassett Creek Valley station area. So it kind of acts as a trail connection and a connection to the light rail station. So those were the kind of what we've seen accomplished over the past year. Just wanted to get into briefly what to expect in the Bassett Creek Valley station area. This is a visual representation that shows what we think is going to be going on in this area. You start to see, you see station work and station building activities, those yellow diamonds at all of the stations that are nearby, and including the Target Field station up there. But you'll certainly start to see more and more activity at Bassett Creek Valley Station. And continued development of the corridor protection barrier. I saw a comment come through the email chain today about Glenwood. You'll certainly see Glenwood take, it's a significant priority to move the process forward at Glenwood Avenue Bridge. We can talk about that as well. But that's a major construction site. And just as a side note, I'm hoping to offer tours, we'll talk about that too, of kind of that showcase a little bit of like what's going on at Glenwood this summer. So we'll make sure the ROC is aware of that, so we can, if people want to sign up and see those, participate in those tours, they can do so. But basically what we're seeing here is, working on the stations. It does involve some pile driving or sheeting installation activity, and then working on that corridor protection wall. That's kind of the two major elements right in the vicinity of Bassett Creek Valley. I kind of already mentioned the stations there, and the major structures. Just as an addition, maybe not right in the footprint of Bassett Creek Valley, but certainly something that you may encounter if you're traversing or kind of entering downtown, is that we have a bridge, that LRT bridge that climbs coming out of the Royalston Avenue Farmers Market station to connect into Target Field, and we'll be continuing work there, which may, and I think I have this on the next slide, have some impacts to like 5th and 7th Street there when we do some of that work. In addition to that, for those that may utilize the connection from the on-off ramp area of Penn and Wayzata, we don't know exactly if this is going to happen this year. We're kind of watching this area, but there is still slightly a chance that the Wayzata Boulevard area for the Bryn Mawr station might get closed. So we're keeping close track of that just in case. Certainly there will be advance notice when that closure occurs, because it will result in a pretty in a noticeable detour for residents and users in that area. And then again, not so much in the BCVs in the ROC's realm, but we'll have some impacts to Holden Street over in kind of near the farmers market. We had planned to reconstruct Border Avenue in that area as well. That work has been delayed until next year, but there still will be some noticeable traffic impacts in that area. So for the Bassett Creek Valley area, you're seeing not only that's kind of our 2022 timeframe and what we can confidently say is upcoming in 22. But of course, folks know the scope of the project. They know what's coming. Some of these elements that are coming that we're looking a little bit past 22 likely. And those are the things that I kind of put here. For Fremont Avenue, we know that there's sidewalk work yet to be completed up on Fremont, south of Glenwood. And so that is something that certainly will need to be communicated. It just won't involve full closures of the roadway, but it will involve certainly some impacts to some of the driveways in that area, as we say, pour the concrete driveway pads for those entrances and exits. And then eventually we do have roadway impacts to Van Wyck Avenue coming. There will be closures for when the vertical circulation or stair and elevator towers are being constructed. So that is something we will have to monitor closely. This group will be very valuable to us when that work is coming online, so you can help us to communicate that out to the larger community, because that certainly will be a pain point for folks that use that road a lot. And then, it's not all about closings. We do want certainly to be trumpeting our when things are starting to reopen, when people get their facilities back. And in this area, certainly the two trail facilities, Loose Line and Cedar Lake Trail, we don't have firm timeframes for those, but we are working on that actually currently. You can expect updates to the trail detour information and trail timeframes. We're trying to just give people a refresh on information about the trails in the next month or so that they and get our signage updated out in the corridor, because it's very old and very graffitied, and we need to do that. So look for that information coming, but we certainly realize how important it is to get these trails back online. Just briefly about communications, we have our 24-hour hotline. Not so many calls from kind of the Bryn Mawr, Bass Creek Valley area, just because residences are a little bit further away from the work that's being done, which is good. But certainly folks should always feel, even for non-urgent but really important questions, they should always feel free to contact the hotline. And we will get back to you with any kind of questions or resolution. And that honestly extends even to things like signage. If you're frustrated or worried about a sign that's out of place, you see that that's the perfect outlet for it's the perfect venue to communicate those kinds of issues is through the hotline. We did have some walking tours last year, and like I said, I do want to continue those tours again this year. We'll be doing it at different sites. I'd say Bassett Creek Valley, probably not a likely site this year, but I could certainly see summer 23 being a really opportune time to say, like, have a rock tour, right? Like a rock group or a ROC membership tour for that site or some of the other sites in that area. There will be other opportunities to tour elements of the project, and we'll get that information out here probably in this coming construction update that'll come out on Friday. Kind of mentioned those already, but we're always having pop-up events, out on the trails, just letting people know what's upcoming. And certainly if for you all, as members of the community, if you have events that you think it would be useful to communicate information out to the participants of those events, I, as the outreach coordinator, will be happy to come and table or even just provide information if you don't have room for me. But I'd love getting out there and talking with folks, especially as fingers crossed. I don't know, it's hard to say with COVID these days, but I feel very confident in being able to get out and obey some COVID protocols, but be out in face-to-face conversation with folks to give them updates about the project. My last note here is just making sure that everybody is signed up for the weekly updates. They just transitioned back to weekly. Over winter, they were bi-weekly, kind of during the slowdown of the construction season, but we are pushing those out weekly. So that's a really good place to turn for updates for upcoming activities. There's our social media stuff, but I will stop sharing my screen so you don't have to just look at that, and we can reshare as necessary if anyone has questions about maps or anything like that. David, I'll turn it back to you if you want to, or we can just open it up for questions.
Sure. Yeah, let's open it up for questions. I don't need to run the questions. Anybody have anything they want to comment or question on?
This is Michael Martins, and I asked the question about the Glenwood Avenue Bridge. When is it going to be reopening? And is there any compensation for the businesses on Glenwood that lost business because of the bridge being closed 2 years longer than it was originally planned?
Nick, just to kick off with the reopening date, we're certainly working through a lot of that kind of information with our contractor, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can just, we were hopeful that we were going to reopen in 2022 this year, but towards the end of the last construction season, we ran into an unforeseen condition below one of the adjacent properties. And so we have been working this winter to mitigate the necessary issues over there, which required some grouting and some additional monitoring for that. And we also ended up changing our foundation design for that eastern abutment for that bridge. And so we're working through that with a contractor right now on what the timeline of that looks like, but it's looking more towards fall of 23 as a potential opening.
What was the unforeseen condition? Was it a stream of water or what?
No, it was just so some of the soil conditions below an adjacent property had I don't know, deteriorated is the right word, but we started seeing some settlement below and adjacent to the construction project. And so, you know, we're very cautious on how we're approaching that. And so, yeah, we you know, had some special investigation by some forensic structural engineers look at the building itself, and we're in communication with our contractor on how to mitigate and move through that area a little bit more gingerly. And so we changed our foundation design from a, you know, pile driven foundation, which is similar to what's the, you know, the other abutments. That's essentially Glenwood is 3 construction bridges. It's two roadway bridges and an LRT bridge that goes through the middle of it. So you know, on the west side, West Glenwood, those are both pile driven, pile supported foundations. And so yeah, those were completed you know, last year, and then we shifted the BNSF track, and then we were allowed to build into the in the middle structure, which is that LRT bridge, which you guys are kind of seeing out there right now. And then right now the gap is this East Glenwood section, and we'll be working on that foundation this construction
Okay,
season.
so that makes sense to be very cautious about another building falling down or falling apart and you have to pay for it. So we understand that. So you're thinking fall of 23 is when Glenwood Avenue Bridge might be completed now?
That's correct.
And to answer Michael's other question, for those businesses that
Steve, you went on mute there as you were talking.
for those businesses that have struggled to stay afloat, is there anybody we could appeal to get some consideration, or is that not part of the picture at this point in time?
It's kind of outside of my realm of expertise as far as like, yeah, Dave, I don't know if you want to take it.
Yeah, well, when we've previously had businesses concerned about this, we've usually connected them with either kind of like local partners who have more resources available. And I wouldn't say, well, resources, I'm not talking about money necessarily, but at least guidance on how to maybe procure assistance. Nothing is ever guaranteed in terms of like an amount of assistance, but we encourage business owners to reach out to us individually to do that. So if they are expressing concern, then they should certainly reach out and we can connect them. Go ahead.
If I had a business that you know, is in that position, should I have them reach out to you, contact you as a
yeah,
start?
absolutely. It's a starting point, Steve.
Okay.
It's certainly not the ending point.
And what is your email address?
Sure. It's david.davies@metrotransit.org.
That-
I will send this presentation out to David and he can circulate, and it's in the slides as well.
metrotransit.org.
Correct.
Okay. And do you have a phone number you could provide, or?
Yep. My work mobile is 612-590-4429.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we're happy to, in that role, we're usually trying to play facilitator and connect people.
How about then the Van White Boulevard? You said that might be closed at some point in time when you do the elevators. Those are presumably the elevators that are on the other side of 394, on the south side of 394. Is that correct?
So on Van White, we have their vertical circulation towers so that you can descend from Van White directly onto the station.
Okay, the station that's on our side, that's on the
Bassett Creek Valley station, correct?
Yep. And when do you think that Van White Boulevard be closed during that time, or limited to one lane, or what are you thinking?
You know, I would say it probably depends on the. I think that'll be something we have to discuss with our contractor and with the city. Certainly, that's with any road closures we coordinate with our.
It's only 2 lanes, 1 lane one way, 1 lane the other way. So I don't know how you would,
correct.
You know, unless you had somebody out there managing traffic,
there may be,
Which happens sometimes.
Yeah, there exactly. We do have flaggers. Sometimes, you know, it really will depend on the duration and phases of work. There might be different phases of that closure. It is something certainly that we're going to track pretty closely and make sure people are aware of. I remember, what was that, when that unplanned, was it a water, a force main or something like that busted a few years back, and they switched the alignment of the road, right, to like one way only at certain points in time, if I remember correctly, something like that. But you know, we will certainly assess those opportunities, those possibilities with the city.
So David and Nick, just to follow up on that, is
Sure.
there an effort to plan accordingly to ensure that the contractor, when winter conditions commence, that bridge is not left closed through the course of the winter while the contractor leaves the vicinity?
David, it's certainly a good point. We'll certainly take that back.
Yeah.
Just
obviously-
as a reminder, the impound lot is now accessed off of the Van White Bridge. So that part of the bridge, I think, has to stay open 100% of the time.
And is that the part of the bridge that's accessed off of like Glenwood and that side, and not the 394 side?
Yeah, you can get to it from both sides. I believe there is no median there. So if Metro Transit had to close down the southern portion of the Van White Bridge during construction for that vertical element, you could get to the impound lot from the north, the ingress egress from the north side of the bridge. And I think it would just be kind of a left in coming southbound and a right out going northbound.
Well, I'm sure David Davies at Mr. Wellington and others would certainly appreciate if you could keep a lane open with his investment there and the other people looking to get people back and forth. You know, we oftentimes don't think about how detrimental it is to these businesses when we just go ahead and get stuff done. But at Penn Avenue in Wayzata, is the Wayzata Street, because I refer to 394, is the Wayzata Street that little piece that parallels 394 on the south side?
Yeah, the frontage road there. Yep.
Okay, so you'd still be able to exit off of 394 onto Penn and then take a left and go, you know, across 394 to the north, or could that exit ramp and the entrance ramp on the south side of 394 be closed?
If I remember correctly, I'd have to revisit the maintenance of traffic plans, but if I remember correctly, that would basically be a full closure in that area. Or basically, we're realigning the streets in that area to make room for one thing we're making room for. I'm going to try to bring up the roll plot here too.
So cars coming into downtown could get off on that underpass that goes down to whatever street takes a right, and you go over to Dunwoody, and they could take a left and come into Bassett Creek.
Let's see here.
As long as Van White, you know, it'd be really detrimental is if you closed Van White and Penn Avenue at the same time.
Those are certainly the things that are taken into consideration when we coordinate closures with the city.
Yeah, just don't do that. That would be hugely detrimental.
Yes, I just checked and I was wrong about that median on Van White, right adjacent to that ingress egress for the new impound lot entrance. There is a median there, and so you could not going southbound on Van White cross that median and get into the impound lot. It's northbound traffic right in from the south.
So I'm not sure exactly how much the closure will impact that the actual intersection of Wayzata and Penn. Certainly there's sidewalk work in that area. We've got road work kind of right up on it. And then the majority of the road work is on kind of Wayzata in that curve to allow for the passenger drop-off lane to be constructed, as well as the additional kind of station entrance work, sidewalk and entrance work to the pedestrian bridge there. So I don't know exactly what the final outcome will be and the ramifications. And I think that would probably also be something that will be kind of, you know, considered in terms of like how the work is going to be done and what kind of phases might be possible, things like that.
Yep.
Because certainly one of the, we've got residences and businesses right here on that west side that have a keen interest in this closure.
It's your current understanding that there is no plan to eliminate the Bass Creek Valley Station from long-term operations, given the cost constraints that the whole project is under.
This is Nick. Yeah, that's correct, David.
Is that a contract that you signed or that Met Council signed with the feds to guarantee the 100 or the 1 billion that came into the project from the federal side?
Can you rephrase that question? That's
I'm assuming that the funding was tied to the 16 stations. And I just want to make sure that we understand kind of where the pain points are and at what point cost cutting might come our direction.
Yeah, we're not currently, if you kind of go back to that slide, we're not currently contemplating major cost cutting or for that, which would require elimination of any stations.
And so the main plan is really to more fundraise the gap as opposed to make significant cost cutting measures. Is that a
That's
fair
correct.
comment?
That's fair.
I like that better. Somebody will come up with money. And the contractors know that too. I've got personal experience with that. I would say just a note on your slide 15, you show other projects if you build it, they will come kind of genre, and your Minnetonka Station slide is a little outdated. That project is currently on ice. There are 2 other projects currently under construction immediately adjacent to that station, one of which I'm quite familiar with, that you could use as an image of the if you build it, they will come.
Appreciate that, David. We'll get that updated.
Yep.
This is Jerry Krause. A quick question on the sort of timeline for the line being open in 2027. Is the additional months or years in delay attributable primarily to the Kenilworth, or are there other aspects? I get questions frequently about, well, things are, the towers are cracking and falling apart, and this is a major delay, one delay after another in cost. Can you maybe address the sort of the timing delay, and then also if you can speak to it, and unless it's proprietary, about the status of the cracks in the grain silos? Thanks.
You want to start, David, or you want me to?
Let's see. So in terms of timing, so the scope items certainly were those key issues that that Nick talked about, were certainly some of the big factors of working through this agreement and adding time to the project, which includes the Kenilworth Tunnel. And I think we're being very clear that when we talk about project elements, that will, like the timeline for completion of project elements in terms of civil construction, tunnel will be right there towards the end in terms of when it will be completed. It's a long lead item. Certainly there have been delays that we've faced with the tunnel, and so it's going to go right there to the end of near the end of civil construction, which is not 20. Remember, that's not 27. 27 is the opening, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
We're kind of right. And then Nick, do you want to?
So as far as the towers and Seeker are concerned, I don't know how much you guys are reading in the papers or any of that nature, but council hired a consultant in order to evaluate those towers and understand what the separations of those towers are. And we've had a meeting with their coordination group. And then we are planning on having a meeting with their full, residents later this month. And so, that's kind of all we've left it at to this point, as far as we're trying to engage those residents personally and make sure that they're allowed, some privacy as we work through this issue with them.
Yeah, we really want to respect, since this is a community full of homeowners, right, at the condo association. So we've got a lot of parties there, homeowner parties, and we want to work through that with respect to them, right? Showing some respect to them as we, talk through these results of this analysis.
Okay, thanks.
When I hear the word unforeseen, it kind of like I go into PTSD. So it's like it's a triggering mechanism for me. So I guess I just kind of, I know that that's the official line. But we also, I think, as a ROC, have a pretty clear understanding of the challenges of the soil condition in the valley. And so I don't think anybody really that is reading in the newspaper about the unforeseen conditions that the light rail construction is finding, we're not surprised. And so I just kind of wonder about what recourse you guys are able, or leverage you guys are able to inflict upon the dirt contractors and the site work folks. The documents and the specs, the soil condition reports, the testing and the drilling. Are you guys really just held ransom and hostage to their kind of the cost of the costs line of attack?
I mean, that's a really good question, but I mean, I think part of the problem that we ran into specifically in the Kenilworth is we dictated the means and methods for the contractor with the use of that silent piler or that push piler system in there. And when that, started, I understand where you're coming from as far as like geotechnical engineering and making sure that, people should have known that there, we're going to be potential issues. There's potential geotechnical issues on any project that you're working on. I think once you start, dictating the means and methods to a contractor, it kind of, it potentially, hurts your future arguments as far as like that they wouldn't be able to do. If they run into issues, it's now, part of the council's problem to fix. And so that's where we, put forth a design change in order to move towards that secant wall system immediately adjacent to the tower. So I hear where you're coming from, but once you dictate means and methods, it's a tougher argument.
Is that kind of the vast majority of the cost overrun is tied to that specific issue?
With the cost overrun for everything. No, I think it's spread out. So we had direct costs that were impacted by those 3 major change orders and other change orders for the project, and those that incurred inefficiencies to the contractor as well. There's other change orders that contributed to those inefficiencies, and that's kind of what that kind of is what draws it out. And then once you move your final completion date out further, that's when you start seeing the overhead for the contractor kind of go out further. And so I think that's what contributed.
Yeah, that's trickle. Gotcha. Well, I don't envy your position. Thank you for your hard work.
Appreciate that. Thanks, David.
Any other questions?
Hearing none. Thank you both for taking the time and being thorough in your engagement with us. I think we did receive a slide deck, but David, if you could send me a link or send me the hard copy, I can try to circulate that to the team or to the group here. And we may push comments or questions that come in from the group that we're not able to be with us tonight to you, and hope that you can get back to us in some short order if at all possible.
Yeah, we'd appreciate any comments, questions that you have. Send them right over. All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time, folks.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next agenda item, I'm not really sure how to kind of tee this up. Maybe other than I can share, let's see, the document that was provided to us earlier today or yesterday, I lost track, from the city with regard to the encampment. I think this was circulated. I'll leave it up here on the screen for people to take a look at if they didn't have a chance to review it prior to. I can maybe try to just set the table here a little bit. There's been an encampment that has persisted at the land just west of 2nd and Van White on city-owned property. The encampment originally started in, I think, January or February 2020 on the land at the southwest corner of the intersection of 2nd and Van White or Fremont. On city-owned land, that encampment moved west across, I believe it's Humboldt, to city-owned land south of the old blasted art building, that on land that is not quite as contaminated as the land at 2nd and Van White, and that has persisted for 2 years. It's been an issue that many business owners, particularly and some homeowners and renters adjacent or near the property, have made quite noise around, and out of concern and frustration for safety and security of those living at the encampment, as well as residents and businesses nearby. And I think there's certainly an interest to see what the next stage of that encampment may tell us here in the near future. I believe some pointed questions were asked to a variety of city officials and city staff recently. And then Mr. Jim Voll, who is with us tonight. Thank you, Jim, for attending. I think you were able to route some of those questions to various folks in the city, and I might just hand it over to you because I'm well beyond my understanding of what's going on here.
Sure, David. Well, when Beth retired, I volunteered to be a CPED staff person to come to this meeting. So I just want to explain a little bit about tonight. And so I happen to be here, and this letter happens to be here, but I'm not a member of the homeless response team, and I'm really not able to do more than what's in the letter. But what I will tell you is that, which I know can be frustrating, but the group asked me at one of the last meetings, or maybe the last 2 meetings, to forward the concerns to the homeless response team. So the city has a team that has members of lots of departments: CPED, health, police, fire, city attorney, public works, and so forth. And so I've done that. I've forwarded all of your comments to them, and I've asked them to verify that they have the comments and that they're aware of them. And they have responded back to me that, yes, Jim, we have received the comments and we are aware of them. And then the most recent request was that we would ask somebody from that team to come and speak to this meeting. And so I made that request, and I was told that they could provide a written response. And so I received that this morning, and I forwarded it to Vita this morning. I believe she must have forwarded it on to all of you. So this is the level of what am I trying to say? I guess I know as much as you do, and as much as it is in this letter. I know Steve sent me an email, which I didn't get to until before this meeting, Steve Faber, asking what's the date for the closure. So when I read this memo, it says, that they're acknowledging that there's an encampment there. They're acknowledging the concerns. They're saying that the closure level is high, so that it's a priority. But they have not given a date for the enclosure, the encampment closure. So, that's what I have there. I know that they are working on, they closed the one in the North Loop. I don't know how long ago, that was a few weeks ago, and they closed one today in West Phillips. So, but I have not been given a date for when this one will be addressed. So I know that can be a little bit frustrating, but I've tried to forward your guys' concerns, and I've tried to get a response for you. And so this is what I've been able to accomplish. And I guess that's my extent of my presentation.
Can I chime in with a question?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to answer, but I think you can certainly ask any questions.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Aaron Goldstein. I'm a property owner in the neighborhood. My office is there, and then we own the building where Ladonia and Royal Foundry are tenants. I'm just curious, first and foremost, who's responsible for overseeing the homeless encampment activity at the city right now?
I don't know. I don't know if they've designated a person who is, there's like one person that's responsible. It's that homelessness response team, which I say has got members from various city departments on it, because some of these issues are reg services issues, some are public works issues, some are police issues, some are CPED issues. So, I guess the answer I can give you is what I've been told is that there is this response team, but there's not like a, I have not been given the name of a point person or a czar or a person who is in charge of all of it. They work together on it as a response team.
Okay. So, because last week, there were pictures circulated noting some really serious, dangerous conditions for people, not only in the camp, but also for the neighbors around there, just with a bunch of gas canisters lined up next to lamps that they're using to heat their tents, and then also extension cords that were sitting in standing water on the site. And it's mind-blowing to me that this is a horrible accident waiting to happen here, both for the people that are living there and also for the neighbors around there. And it's just, I can't believe that there's not more action being taken, just given the clear and present danger of what's going on there. And it's just crazy to me that there's nobody at the city that's being held accountable to bring this to an end.
Yeah, and so you sent emails to the mayor's staff, Councilmember Ellison, Councilmember Goodman, several city staff leaders, and I forwarded all of your material again to the team. So,
and nobody's
I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I can say beyond that.
Okay.
I want to remind people my role was I volunteered to keep a connection with the CPED and the city development staff with this group, but I can't be. I want to pick my words carefully. It's difficult for me to be able to do anything more than ask the people who are in charge of this to give you a response. That's the best, and so I'm sure that's a frustrating answer, but I don't know what else I can say to you other than I've forwarded your concerns. I've asked the questions. I asked for a response, and that's at some point I don't know what more I can do. And I'm not expecting you guys. I'm not expecting you guys to be happy with that. I'm just saying I don't want to be flippant. I don't want to seem like I don't care, but that's where we're at.
Tim, I'm going to just speak for myself here and nobody else. I personally appreciate your willingness to attend these meetings and be the conduit between ROC and CPED staff. I think that there's obvious benefits for ROC staying connected closely to CPED staff to be able to achieve the objectives that ROC has had longstanding for their vision of the valley. I putting myself in your position, I think I know kind of what you do. You're a long-range planner and are working on kind of longer range policy objectives. And this is, from my perspective, quite outside your wheelhouse and purview. This is a kind of a nitty-gritty cross-functional challenge that has, frankly, the elected officials stymied from what I can tell. And I share Aaron's frustration that it feels like nobody is grabbing the challenge and wrestling it to the ground. There are clearly people that are living in this camp or participating in activities of this camp that need help and services. And obviously, I think most people would want them to be able to get those services or provide those for them. And there are certainly illicit activities or dangerous activities for a variety of reasons that I think many of us would like to see stop. And I don't know that, I don't personally hold you accountable for trying to get city leadership to take a stronger stance and move forward on this.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you communicating about it.
So I apologize because I had to take an emergency call when this encampment discussion was happening. But I assume, so I know I'm going to ask a question that's probably been answered already, Jim. You said that they were expecting to get this thing closed January 11, 2022, but that's been delayed. And now, you know, you're looking to kind of determine the next date by which people coalesce around and say, this is the date by which we're going to get the camp cleaned up. Do you have that date or know when they're going to, when they're going to make that determination, what that date is?
Yeah, Steve. Well, so yeah, just to back up a little bit, I didn't write this letter. This is my request to the homelessness response team. This is their response to me.
Okay.
So no, I don't have a date. Nobody said this to me. This is just my guess. I'm sure they're probably not going to say the date that they're going to do it. But nobody said that to me. I'm just,
Right.
I mean, none of the other camps, we never got a notification about any of the other camps that were closed down. So what I read in this letter, but I guess I shouldn't even be saying this because I don't know. I honestly don't know. But what I read in this letter is they've said that they're acknowledging the issue, that the priority is high, and they're working on a date.
So why did the other homeless encampments why were they successful in being closed and finding opportunities for people to be housed and do whatever needed to be? And this one here is this one bigger than the other ones, or why is this one the troublesome spot?
I can't answer that question. I don't know how they're picking the order.
Were all the homeless camps on city-owned property, or is it just this one that's on city-owned property?
The one in the North Loop, I know, and I know this from reading the newspaper, was on privately owned property. The West Phillips one, I assume that's on public property, but I don't know.
So that might be part of the issue is, you know, if I'm a private individual and this is on my property, I'm going to have my lawyers up the city's butt, you know, getting something done. If this is on city-owned property, you got a little bit more time because it's your own property. But you know, it's,
well, you know, and I'm not sure if that's totally true because the owner of the one on the North Loop was actually fighting the city quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably a more difficult one than maybe that was on our own property.
Yeah, that was Sabri.
And I would say that the city-owned issue might be delaying it because I know there's a pending lawsuit around the issue of evictions.
in other words, somebody's suing the city saying you can't evict us from the city-owned site?
Yes.
Okay. So
This is Vicky. I just want to jump in for a second because Jim, I'm sorry that you're on the hot seat, and all of the questions that we have previously asked have been generally answered, but not specifically answered. And I know that we have a lot of more questions to ask tonight. But what I want to say to the other members in this meeting is that I think that Jim has told us that he shared all the information he has. We can generate another set of questions that Jim can bring back to the task force, one of which might be, we'd like to know who is the direct contact person for this homeless task force within the city. But Jim, I'm really sorry you're on the hot seat, and I appreciate that you are sticking with the ROC, and I just hope that we can, you know, move forward in a way where Jim leaves us with maybe another list of questions that he can hopefully bring back to us at a date perhaps sooner than 2 months out.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Vicky, thanks for asking it. The Homeless Encampment Association or group that produced this letter, who's responsible for that association or group?
Well, I haven't got an answer as to there's a point person. What I've been told is that general questions can go to 311 if there is an emergency, and that's how they track stuff. So that it's not meant as a flippant answer. Emergencies, like if you see an actual emergency like you would anywhere in the city, should go to 911, and then sort of the general safety concerns, but I want to be careful for his sake, but can go to, oh, what is his name? Snyder, Officer Snyder, Lieutenant Snyder, I don't know his rank, with the 4th precinct. But I want to be careful that, you know, that he's not the point person for all of these issues either, but he can certainly help with the general safety issues. But I think if you ask that question, I will ask that we get a, you know, that if there can be a better answer for that.
Let me ask this question. Whose ward is it in? Is this Lisa Goodman's, or is this the other fellow in the 5th ward? Huh?
It's Councilmember Ellison's ward.
Okay, well, we should, as ROC, be, you know, talking to Councilman Ellison about this. I mean, he's our council member. It's in his ward. You know, he's the one that should be, that we can go to. Now, I don't know if he's willing to do anything or capable of doing anything, but, you know, he's the one that we should be talking about, saying, you know, we need a resolution on this. You need to lead the charge. You know, I mean, it's his ward. So I think,
Steve, if I can just chime in for a second. I mean, we've sent multiple emails, requests for meetings with him. We've been invited to come and sit with him at his office hours, like on Saturday mornings when, you know, he just meets with kind of people over general things that are going on in the ward. I mean, to me, this is a huge deal. He should be deeply concerned with what's going on here. And additionally, when they tried to close the encampment this last time, he was one of the ones that showed up to prevent it from happening. So, you know, I guess I don't know what other and Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like go on the attack with you. I appreciate you being here. It's frustrating that, like, if we sit here and keep sending letters to the, you know, to the mayor and to council members, there's no accountability and nobody responds. And it just doesn't feel like there's anybody that's in position to make a decision to transition this to, you know, being done.
has Mayor Fry responded when you sent Aaron? Has anybody sent anything to him officially, or?
I sent an email to him last week along with several other council members, and including like his aides, one of which was Peter Ebnet, who previously been very responsive on the topic. The only person that responded was Lisa Goodman, saying how incredibly disappointed and frustrated she was that nobody else responds. So like, we can sit here as the ROC, you know, I think we should go on record if people are in support of trying to see closure here, and we should try to write a letter as a group to the mayor's office, just so we're on record. But I just don't think it's gonna make a difference. And so that's my point, is I'm just trying to figure out like who is accountable for making decisions on this, and it just doesn't answer.
Aaron, in your conversations with Lisa Goodman, do you think she would be willing to kind of help us navigate the city in terms of who we might talk to kind of influence somebody to get a decision?
It's not her ward, and she just kind of indicated she's been in touch with people at the city attorney's office, and just nobody is really given anything.
Okay, but Nicole, you're confident, or you're aware that the city has been sued? Who's sued the city on behalf of evicting these people? Is it an entity? Is it one of the people on the site, or who?
I believe it's the ACLU.
Well, I just want to say, I don't think people have to feel sorry for being upset or frustrated. I don't take it personally. I just don't want you to think I am some moron who doesn't care. I guess that's just my own personal feeling. I just don't. So, I mean, that's all I was trying to say. But I mean, you know, I get the frustration. I think you can do a follow-up with some of those specific questions, and I'll forward them. Again, you know, Aaron, I feel like you've written a letter to a lot of people, so I don't know if we'll get a direct response that says the city says yes, next Thursday we're going to close it. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I do feel like when I read this that the response group has said it's a high priority and we're working on a date. So I feel like there's something positive in that. But if you want to put down a few points, like we'd like to have a direct contact person, and whatever else. I'm not going to tell you what you need to put, what you guys want to put in your letter, but I will forward it to the team and just say, you know, they're feeling not heard, and you know, I don't know. The answer might be, well, we made a response. That's the response. I can't promise you what'll happen, but I'll do that if you would like to compose something.
Aaron, I've been gone for 4 months. The site that they occupy, is it the site that the city owns, that David Wellington is about 2 blocks toward downtown from your project and kind of adjacent to where the Paper Kalmanson people are? It's right next to yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's the site I thought it was.
And it's also growing, you know, along on the east side of Van White along the river, has become like a massive site as well.
East Van White along the river, which north of Glenwood or south of Glenwood, or where?
Right down in here.
Right down in there. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that city-owned land there?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The city owns the vast majority of everything east of Van White, north of the creek, except for just a little bit of right of way that we acquired from CP Rail.
Right. Well, that's city-owned land in that's where the bus terminal is, right? So they own that bus terminal and they own the adjacent.
So
land.
when you say city, it's not CPED.
Right.
MPS or public schools owns this portion, which that's a different kettle of fish, as we all know. But then, yeah, all the land that's adjacent to it, but for that little right of way, is owned by the city.
So David Wellington, I mean, this is sort of off topic, but sort of related. I mean, you guys have the rights, it sounds like, to, you know, develop. No,
those expired a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. So
We're
that's
certainly
done.
very interested.
Well, I mean, so generally though, you have lots of interest in the neighborhood, as do myself, you know, everybody else here. I mean, what's, you know, I guess so it's not impacting your direct rights to develop that site anymore. I don't know. Do you have any other comments to add here?
Well, I mean, it's certainly having an impact on our capacity to lease the Leaf office building. That's
exactly, for sure. I mean, if I'm coming to that Leaf office building and I happen to drive by that site, which is 1 block down the street, I'm shaking my head and having a whole lot of thought about whether I'm safe or whether I want to go in that building.
Yeah, that's true. That's happening.
I mean, I've leased millions of square feet of space, and that is not a good thing to have. You know, I'm sorry, it's unfortunate these people, you know, need to find a place to live, but having that right there is a terrible thing for that office building, which was a pioneering effort to begin with. And now you put it there and you can talk about the neighborhood's kind of moving in the right direction and things are going the right direction. You got this a block away. That, you know, I wouldn't lease there, and I don't think most tenants would.
Well,
So
from our perspective, the good news is that we are fairly confident that we're going to start construction on the Curry Commons housing project on the land that Carl Eller used to own exclusively and now owns with us. We think that's going to start construction in August. That's a 187 unit housing project right here. So there's going to be quite a bit of construction activity and people working on site through the next, 18 months effectively. And then there's going to be 185 families or so living on site. It's a big project and going to have quite a it's going to change the flavor of the nature of the valley down there. I think it's going to have a really positive impact. And that will likely spur additional interest in the valley. And we feel like that's a good next step. And I'm under the impression that Habitat and the Land Trust are planning to start construction on their 18-unit townhome project west of our office building here this spring or summer. So there's going to be quite a bit of activity over the next construction season. And I mean, I think there's last I heard from folks, the city as well as the MPD, there's 9 or 10 people that are living either part-time or full-time at the encampment. And I think many of them need services desperately. And so my understanding is that the city and other staff are providing services to try to alleviate their need and are trying to encourage them to move into either long-term homeless units or additional shelter opportunities. So I think there is an effort to try to tame the level of growth to the encampment, but I think there's also concern about safety and security of city and county staff that are coming on site to provide those services. My understanding is that the January 11th police action, there was some violence that occurred, and I'm not sure in what direction. So there's some concern about that as well.
Yeah. You know what, I think
I would just like to say that, you know, I was down there on January 11th. I didn't see actually like any violence, and I don't think I even saw any police down there or CPED staff. That my experience was that the eviction never actually went forward at all. They knew that there were people down there and nobody showed up. I think maybe you were thinking of last year, March 18th, when the police showed up, March 18th, 2021, the first eviction attempt, and MPD kneeled on a man's neck in the midst of the jury selection for the Chauvin trial. But I would say that, you know, the folks that have been down there, you know, it's been almost 2 years. And I think we started off with 25 residents. Most of those people, if not all of them, have found housing now. And so it's not just the same residents that have been down there for 2 years, right? There's people that have been able to get housing. And a lot of that has to do with, and I think the number got as low as like 3 back in December, 3 residents. And they had already secured leases. They were just waiting to move into those spaces. I think what happened back in the fall, you know, at that point, the city probably could have successfully closed the encampment. But instead they went forward with other evictions in different locations. And then those residents that were forced out of those other locations came to the near north site. And so, you know, at this point, I think there's around like, 7 or 8 residents down there. I know another resident just got housing outside of the city of Minneapolis and will be moving soon. But I think that one thing about the Near North camp is that a lot of the folks have been able to get into housing because they've had a place to have like as a home base. A lot of folks struggle with not having access to phones or computers. And so when outreach workers know where to find them, that helps in terms of being able to get them into transitioned into housing and to provide them with resources. So while the conditions down there right now are not great, I do just want to recognize that, you know, the efforts of outreach workers have been successful in terms of getting people placed into housing. And most of the people down there, that's their end goal too. They don't want to be living in the encampment indefinitely.
Right, so there's 8 or 9 people at the encampment. How many are there over east of the Van White Boulevard in that other area that people pointed out?
So that area, H&A has not had much contact with the folks at the Van White encampment. They have indicated that they're not interested in engagement efforts. And so we've just respected that. And we have been able though to have good relationships with residents of Near North.
But do you have any idea? Are there 2 or 3, or are there 6 or 12, or are there 20?
The last we checked a couple months ago, it was small, but I do think that it is increasing in size. And again, that could be also due to the fact that these other encampments are being closed down without those residents
Having a place to
truly
go.
they don't actually have
Right.
housing lined up.
Well, it sounds like the city or whomever is trying to help this situation is making some progress in their, you know, if they got rid of, or if they moved 25 people into housing that used to be there, you know, that's admirable, that's good. But they got to step forward and make it a priority, you know, and they also have to realize that this can't be, you know, the relocation spot for everybody in the city that can't find a home, because it sounds like right now it is recognized as, well, this is a place we can go to. And so they get 3 or 4 or 5 more people homes out of here and 6 more show up. And then they get 3 or 4 or 5 more homes out of here and 6 more show up and they get 3 or 4. That can't happen. I mean, I don't know what the answer to it is, but this can't be the encampment of last resort that everybody goes to, that ultimately they get help from, or they get help into places. Maybe what the city needs to find, I don't know where the city has other land, but is there a suitable, because if this process is working, is there a suitable piece of land somewhere else that's distant from businesses and distant from residences that the city can open up as the encampment of last resort? And we have all these people go there and encamp there, and then they get rid of, or not get rid of, they find housing for a dozen of them, and 6 more come in, and they find housing for 8 more, and 10 more come in. But it sounds like this is the encampment of last resort, which it can't continue to be. So Jim, maybe the thing to look at is there, if the city feels good about what they've done, which they should, and they see progress in that they're finding housing for people, you know, it just can't be at this site that it's the encampment of last resort. Is there a site somewhere else that's further removed from residents and businesses where the city could actually build an encampment? You know, maybe they put some fences around it, they put some decorative stuff, they put some porta potties out there, or whatever the case may be, and they welcome people to that location with the intent that we want you all to kind of congregate here, and we'll continue to try to find housing for you. It just can't be on this site.
I would like to support what
I
Steve
don't think
said.
Jim
And
necessarily knows the answer to that, but there is a woman, Sheila Delaney, who's been contracted with the city of Minneapolis to explore those types of possibilities. I think someone sent an example out of Denver. Denver has done a lot of different innovative things.
Well, Mike Martin sent a thing about building igloos or whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't not saying I endorse that idea, but Denver popped up in the email thread, and I know that Sheila, we've attended some of the meetings that they've been having to try and come up with some sort of policy at the city of Minneapolis, because right now there is no formal policy to deal with encampments or to deal with the eviction process for encampments. And so there are efforts being led by Sheila Delaney, she has a contract with the city of Minneapolis. She's also somebody that's been working with the Near North encampment residents personally. And so, and some of that conversation is kind of getting at that same idea, like what can we do to make, you know, outdoor, if people are going to be living outdoors, what can we do to make it safer and cleaner? And, you know, obviously not the end solution, but something that's better than what we currently have.
Vicky, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to support what you were saying, that this can't be the encampment of last resort. I think that what we can ask Jim to bring back to the group is that we do understand the complexity of people being without housing and trying to find suitable housing for the people who are currently in the both encampments in Bassett Creek Valley. However, the encampments are impeding our development efforts. And so we would, if possible, like to have a little more specificity in terms of either moving the people in these encampments to a different location while services are being provided, or when more information in terms of what efforts are being made to close the encampments. And in the meantime, I mean, the issue that we're not really talking about right now that Aaron brought up is the safety issue. You know, the city does have the authority to make sure that if the encampments are going to be here for a week or 2 days or for a short-term period of time, they need to be safe for the people living there and for the broader community. You can't have extension cords in water. You know, the inspections department has, you know, issued tags, you know, What is the city gonna tag itself as the property owner? But the safety issues need to be addressed sooner rather than later.
What about underneath the 394 bridge? You know, south of the impound lot, south of the rock crushing plant there. You've got all that space under the 394 bridge. It's kind of sheltered from the wind, sheltered from the rain to some degree. I don't think you can readily get from there to Dunwoody. I don't
Isn't
know
that
though.
the police hold? Isn't that the police hold?
Yes, I believe that's where where it's planned for the police holds.
So
Yeah.
a lot of vehicles were, yeah, Beth, that's something Beth Grossen and, well, me to a lesser extent worked on, was getting some of the impound lot moved underneath the 394. I
Yeah,
don't,
but
I mean,
but there's a lot
394,
of
there's a lot of space there, yeah.
there's a lot of space there. And that would get it on the other side of light rail transit, which isn't going to be done for 5 years anyway, or what we just heard. It would get it on the other side of, you know, the public works in that area. So it kind of, you know, it separates it there. I don't know what the access is by foot to Dunwoody, but that seems to me that that might be and it's controlled because you could kind of, you know, fence off a section and say, okay, this is the section that we want you all to be in, and here we're gonna, you know, help you. That might be a good idea to put it there. And you know, hopefully it's only going to be there for a year or two, but it sounds like there's a constant trickle of people who, well, obviously there's a constant trickle of people who need homes, and that might be beneficial. The story would be, hey, let's find a place for all the people that are scattered throughout Minneapolis that are putting up here and putting up there, and let's put them in a spot where we can kind of pay attention to them, give them some services, and then help them on to their next place.
Steve, do you or anybody else know who actually owns the dirt underneath 394?
I don't have a clue. I assume it's the city or the county or some public entity.
Yeah, I just hope it's not the state.
Yeah.
It seemed to me we had to work with, but I could be wrong, so I shouldn't even be venturing an answer. But when we talked about putting the cars under there, I feel like we had to work with MnDOT.
Yeah.
Well, if it is the state, I know a lot of people that are well up the chain of command in Congress, or, you know, in the state, whatever, reps in Congress, and, you know, people of importance in that area. Maybe we get them behind this. You know, it would, if you look at how it would be sold, okay, we have a problem. Instead of these people wandering from here to here, let's put them in one area. Let's give them enclosure. Let's give them whatever, you know, things we can to make their stay there more habitable. And now we have them all in one area. They even know where to go. So, you know, they're going to start to sign up and go there, and then we can, you know, and they can see that as a conduit to getting to, you know, a better opportunity. You know, because that seems to be what's happening in Bassett Creek right now, is every other encampment gets closed, and, you know, they take care of 6 or 8 or 10 of them, and the next thing you know, 4, 5, 6 more are there. So maybe under, I think, Jim, that would be a real, you know, think about it. Politicians could get behind that too. Look what we're doing. We're gonna take care of this problem. We're gonna isolate it to a specific area. We're gonna invite people to come there. We're gonna have a path for them to find a home to be. Look what we're doing. I mean, you know, politically, that would seem to me to be something that people could jump behind, and then you could say, vote for me because I'm, you know, the guy in the 5th Ward that, you know, Mr. Ellison, that came up with this idea.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring. I've spent a lot of time under that area, walking over to Kenwood and back and forth between it and Bryn Mawr. It's a nasty kind of place down there. Roadway traffic, the noise is just horrific, let alone the fumes from vehicles.
True. Yeah.
And then what you're doing is sort of, even though there's not a business per se, you're moving the problem closer to the ice arena, and also to the Blake School, which is the sort of the conduit going out to the south from that area.
Well, there's no good spot for it, but, you know, the city, I think this is something the city ought to look to do. Where is the spot that they could do something like this and house these people temporarily until they can, find another spot to go.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Steve, at all. It's just, I think there's a problem wherever it is.
All right, I gotta run.
Well, I have just a comment that H&A has been supporting this encampment. And when I talked to the reporter from the Star Tribune, her name was Susan Dew, she seemed to think that everyone in Harrison was 100% behind this encampment. And so our voices have been silenced. The people that are really concerned and want something to change.
Jim, do you feel like you have some questions and information to bring back to the larger group within the city?
Well, I think what I would prefer, if you're willing to do it, is to you as a group, as you've done before, put that together, and it can be an email, and I'll forward it on to the team. I don't know if I want to get into trying to figure out whether I should be saying Harrison was supporting this, or we think it's good to go under the underpass, but where we think it should be moved somewhere else. I don't want to get into speaking for you as a group, so I'd prefer that you all would do it.
That's perfectly understandable.
But I mean, I certainly, one thing I can take back right away is I can let them know that I think people are frustrated that they're not getting a response, and that I think it would be helpful if we could open up some lines of communication somehow. So that message I get, and I can clearly do that. I feel less comfortable about getting into the issues of solving the homelessness problem, knowing that there are other people in the city. I don't want the people in the homelessness response team to be talking about zoning. That's my thing. So what I'm saying is I want to kind of keep it in their court. I even think, Nicole was talking about some stuff that I didn't know about. What I don't know about this topic is Legion. I don't think it's good for me to be getting involved with. There are other people who know a lot more about it. All I can say is I know it's frustrating. I think we could do a better job of communicating, and I'll relay that message. But the response we did get from them did say that it's a high priority and they're aware of the issue. So I think that should be something that's positive to take away from that response.
Jim, could you ask them to either send somebody to each ROC meeting or send a letter giving us an update of what's happened since the last ROC meeting?
Well, you mean for the next ROC meeting? I mean, that's what I did. I asked them to send somebody, and they said, well, no, but we can send a written response. And then that's what I have here. So I certainly can ask for another another update, or whether they would reconsider that.
Okay, thank you very much for that effort.
Yeah, and with regard to H&A, I mean, I think for Harrison Neighborhood Association, the H&A does not support forced eviction if the only alternative is a Shelter Connect hotline number. We know we've tried calling to find beds. Most of the time, there's not beds available. It's not a good alternative. So we support the ability of residents to get stable long-term housing. I don't think that means that I've heard some people from this group claim that Harrison started the encampment, that we are actively encouraging it, that it's simply not true. We're trying to be humane to our neighbors and offer assistance through the cold weather months so that people don't die outside in the cold. And we don't support forced evictions when there's actually nowhere for these folks to go, because what we have seen is that people being able to stay in one spot for a longer period of time allows them to then secure housing.
Nicole, I think one of the problems that I'm hearing that it never crossed my mind until it was brought up is that, and I don't know who would answer this question, but as the other encampments are closing, the people who have been unable to find housing are moving into the encampments in Bassett Creek Valley, which is really making the issue larger. And it really is impeding the development efforts, which really does have a positive impact on the Harrison neighborhood as a whole. So I think that we are into a new chapter, and I don't know how best we can work together. But Bassett Creek Valley cannot really become sort of the encampment of last resort, as Steve said. At the same time, I don't know if anybody really understands. Nobody, if you are dependent on the shelter system, you line up and you never know from day to day whether you're going to get a bed or you're not going to get a bed, or what you're going to do with the few possessions that you've managed to sort of cobble together. And so the shelter system, as it was devised, worked at one time in the past, but it's not working today. And so I do applaud the efforts of trying to find suitable housing, but now we're into a new chapter and we have to find a way to work together. And we have to ask, from my point of view, the city, the county, and the Met Council to be more responsive to our questions.
Sorry, somebody's lighting fireworks off next door. No, I agree with you, Vicky. I think part of the problem is that when they go to evict these encampments, they're giving folks the Shelter Connect hotline number. They're not actually providing housing solutions for those folks before they go to evict. So then, people end up at the near North encampment or a different encampment, or they create an altogether new one because people have to go somewhere, right? So I think the overall strategy needs to be that we need more money for affordable housing. We need more resources to ensure that people can affordably live in this city. And when people are experiencing homelessness, that we have a system in place to quickly get them back into housing. And we just don't have that right now. There is not an infrastructure in place that is working at the moment, and there's not even an official policy to deal with it. So I think if people are interested in learning more about the policy efforts, Sheila Delaney would be a good person to get in contact with.
Well, I think that the policy, what you're talking about, policy, building housing, that, doesn't happen in like a month or 2 months. I mean, those are really long-term solutions. Whereas in terms of what the ROC is about, which is development in Bassett Creek Valley, we need something more immediate. And so that's why I support what Steve put out, is that perhaps, I remember several years ago with the Hiawatha encampment, I think the city intervened and worked really closely so that at one point was the encampment of last resort. And I'm just asking that the city do something a little bit more proactively, because we can't stall out the development that we've now spent, 20 plus years trying to get people to create jobs, in the valley.
So I'm going to reiterate what I said at the front end of this meeting. We don't have a quorum, so we can't take in a kind of a formal stance. If there's an interest in kind of trying to draft an email of questions or guidance to send to Jim, we could circulate that amongst ROC members to try to get input and vote via email to have that be a formal action that ROC sends. I guess if there's other ideas that people have to kind of bring this piece of the discussion to a close, feel free to chime in.
David, I support what David's suggestion in terms of trying to get some sort of email among the ROC members in terms of questions. And I believe what I've heard Jim say is that he can say that we are frustrated that we're not getting more direct contact. I don't think we can solve the global issue of homelessness, but we do need to figure out what we can do about the encampments that are in Bassett Creek Valley. So I support what you say in terms of trying as a group to come up with some specific questions.
Okay. Naomi, did you want to say anything? You came back on screen. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I was talking to my husband.
No worries. I could try to take a crack at a draft and send it around to the team here. I have a feeling that it's going to be pretty limited draft, so I would encourage people to add bullet points or critique mine and edit them heavily. Does anybody else have anything they want to have accomplished at this meeting tonight? Hearing none. Jim, I just want to reiterate appreciation for your attendance this evening. Thank you for being the water carrier.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I couldn't do a better job.
I think you did the best you could.
Nicole, you wanted to say something?
Well, while Jim's here, I just wanted to ask him about the Blue Line route modification that was just announced yesterday. After hearing the presentation from Southwest, and in terms of like cost and everything, do you think that the Southwest project will have an impact on the ability of the Blue Line to go forward?
I don't know the answer to that. I personally worry about that a little bit, but we've asked that question and the project office feels they have that, they're aware of that concern. So, you know, that's the best I can say on that. But yeah, they did release the report today, and their recommendation is that it go, for people who don't know, that it go on West Broadway and that it come down Lindale, yeah, and then over into Target Field. We as a city have 30 days to comment, so we will probably, well, we will at May 5th, I believe, at the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee pass a well, I don't know how they'll vote, but the resolution, if it's passed, will be passed at that meeting supporting that route. And some of the language of staff that we've suggested, and I say this for the people here, and especially Nicole, because she's raised this issue several times, we have made it clear that we want all of the partners, including ourselves, the city, to remember that there was a route that was proposed and that's gone, and that we talked about doing a lot of stuff, and we can't forget about that. So it'll read better in the resolution, but the point is that we're not forgetting about that.
One benefit over the Southwest or LRT line is that the soils are quite a bit better, and it doesn't have a whole lot of railroad negotiation. So I'm sure they took that into account when they were trying to choose the alignment.
Well, yeah, I mean, because we had it in a rail corridor before, and that's what sunk us. So
well, now it's going to be a block from my house, though. I hope
Watch
somebody
out.
can do something about the ding, 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 because that's going to drive me insane if I have to listen to that.
I live 2 blocks from light rail, and it kind of goes away over time.
I don't know. I'm really sensitive to sound like that.
Oh, okay.
well, I used to live in the Holland neighborhood of Northeast, next to where all the viaducts are, and we used to joke that the trains went by so often that from the Blues Brothers line, you know, they go by so often you won't even notice it. So I don't mean to make light of it, but hopefully it'll be okay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, does anybody have anything else they want to share?
David, I would just like you to send me the letter from the city. If
yeah.
we get a copy of that.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'm just going to sign off. Thank you, guys.
I'm going to post this. This is going to go to YouTube, and I'm going to post the link, or I'll send the link out to everybody when I get the draft questions out to everybody as well.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Thanks
Thank you much for hosting, David. We
Bye-bye.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jim.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.